Welcome to this video where we're going to take on the really important concept of setting up your jobs, and we're going to look at more the advanced topics. So if you haven't watched the basic jobs video, you'll need to watch that one first. That goes through setting up a job, adding tasks, all the basics to the job. We're going to skip past all that for this video and just jump right into the more advanced stuff. This video is going to be specifically interesting for any company doing service type work, so maintenance or snow and ice, where you want to get into service tracking, service invoicing, billing materials per yard, all that kind of stuff. We'll cover that and how to set that up on your jobs in this video. So let's dive right in. So I'm going to start from a job that I've already created. And this time I'm going to walk through a service or maintenance type job. In the basic video, we did install because it's simple, and the service one here will do maintenance. So I'm going to click that job that I've created. You can see here I've already got my customer set up, my lat long, that kind of stuff. I've got tasks already set up for the job because we kept them really simple in this case, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to go right to services. So what are services for? Well, tasks are good for clocking time in and time out. So we know how long the crew is there doing each function, but we don't know from a task whether the crew finished it or not. So a crew could go in and they could clock in and out of mowing, but maybe they didn't finish it. Maybe they have to go back tomorrow to finish it. Maybe they got rained out. There's no indicator on a task, just a clock in, clock out to let us know that something was completed. By the same token, if I open a task, there's nothing here to do with billing either. There's an option here to make it billable by the hour, but there's no way I can set that this is billable at $100 per service or anything like that. We're going to do that in a service level. And what LMN does is it separates tasks from services for the purpose of being simple for the crews. This is a great example because what I can do is I can take a job and I can make it really simple for time tracking. When the crews clock here, they just clock into maintenance. They don't have to pick a big long list of tasks of what they're doing. They'll clock in and out. But when they leave maintenance, I need to know what got done for billing, right? I need to know whether they cut the grass or mended the beds, did a spring cleanup, installed mulch. All those things will influence perhaps how the contract was billed, but at least we want to track all those services. And so that's exactly what we're going to set up here. We've kept the tasks really simple for crew, just maintenance, and we could be as detailed as we wanted here, but I've kept it really simple as an example. And we're going to go down here to services, and it's through services that we're going to track the work that got completed. To set up services, we're going to go down to the bottom right, and we're going to click Add Services. Now this service list is coming from Settings, Services. So we covered that in the Settings video. This is how to set up your master list of services you want to track. You need to have your services set up in the settings before you can start adding them to the jobs. But I've already done that. I've gone through that. And if you haven't watched that video, it's the settings video for the services screen. Take you through all this. I just need now to add the services that this job has so that we can track them properly. So let's say this job has mowing and bed maintenance, spring cleanup. We also want to track fall cleanup. And maybe we want to track whether we did pruning. And of course, I could add as much as I wanted. Fertilization, grub control, all that kind of stuff, all our services. But we'll keep it fairly straightforward. So we'll add services now, and those all come into the job. So now they're a part of the job. And now what's going to happen is when the crew clocks into this job, they're going to clock into maintenance. When they clock out of this job, they're going to clock out of maintenance. But it's going to present them with a list of these services. And they're going to click which ones they completed. So we'll know on any given date that the crew clocked in at the job at this time, they clocked out at this time, and these are the services that they completed. Now, if your services are not billable, they're all part of the contract, we're more or less done. We don't need to go in here. Most of the invoice type is all set up to hourly rates, except for pruning, which is set to hourly. But what I want to do now is configure my services so that this contract's going to be billed correctly. So I'm going to start with beds. And we're going to say, let's say we have as part of this contract that we're going to clean up the beds 8 times. And it's extra to do the beds. So instead of the invoice type being included, I'm going to set this to billed per visit. And we're going to say each time we do the beds, it's $120. So I've set that up there. I want the service dates to show on the invoice, although I have the option to hide the date, just show the description, show the date, or even show the date and time. Because it's bed cleanup, I'm just going to show the date. And then the crews are just going to see beds done. So nice and simple for them, but that's probably not enough information for a customer on the invoice. The customer is going to get this text down here. So the invoice description is what's actually going to show up on the invoice for the client. So that's something more professional. And again, that all came set up for us because I'd set it up in the settings already. So that's all done. Now I just have to choose whether it's taxable and whether I want to pay careful attention to it for review. So if it's something that we often screw up or miss, I might turn that on. In this case, bed's done is pretty straightforward. I'll leave it off. Now that's set up. Now we want fall cleanup. So we'll go into that. And fall cleanup. Maybe we figure we have 2 visits. It's included in our contract and I don't want to show it on the invoice. Or if I do want to show it on the invoice, even if it's not billable, I can do that. So I can put show date and it's got an invoice description. It'll have a 0 price because it's included in our contract. Show date. If I was billing for fall cleanup, then I would turn it on to be billed. But I'll say it's included and I just want to show the dates. So we got that. Now mowing. Let's say this contract for 30 mows. It's included in our contract. I don't want to show the dates of every mow. Client maybe doesn't need to see all that information, although again, I could turn it on if I want to. This stuff is easy, but I wanted to show you this field here, maximum visits. Maximum visit says if this contract has a cap, so I've got 30 visits included in the contract, but if we need to do more, it's extra. What I'll do is I'll turn on maximum visits and I'll say generate a billing warning for additional visits. So what that'll do is once I've gone over my 30 visits, when I do invoicing, I'm going to start seeing warnings that I've got some mows that need to be invoiced. That makes it really handy for services that have a cap on it. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Let's say pruning is done hourly. So we'll leave that at hourly. And then spring cleanup, let's say it's a flat rate. So we're going to say billed per visit and our spring cleanup at this site is $800. I do want to show the date on the invoice and we've got 1 visit. So now I've configured my services for the job. I can take this a step further now and set up activities or materials that I want to track. So let's say, for example, we want to track how many bags of waste we took away from the site each time. Maybe you charge the customer for disposal. So one thing I can do is now go to activities and materials. I'm going to go down here to the bottom to add materials, and I'm going to add a material called yard waste bags. Now I can choose whether it's billable by the bag, or billable just by a disposal fee. So a flat fee no matter how many bags. Whether we take 1 bag, no bags, or 10 bags, it's a flat rate. In this case, I'll say we're going to make it non-billable, but I want to track from the crews how many bags away. So we know how much waste we're taking away from the site. I'll click OK. Now, each and every time the crew does anything on this job, it's going to ask them when they walk out, did you take any yard waste away? That's great. Works out awesome. And if it was billable, we can turn that on. But what if it was something we wanted to track only when a certain service got completed? For example, let's say we want to track how much mulch got installed, but we're only going to mulch when we do our spring cleanup. So what I can do is this. Instead of adding mulch here, where it's going to show up every time, I'm going to go to services. I'm going to go to spring cleanup, and I'm going to go to linked activities and materials. So what we're going to do is we're going to link mulch to spring cleanup so that it only shows up when the crew does the spring cleanup. So I'll do that and I'll go add. Now again, this is coming from our settings, activities and materials. We've shown you how to set that up in a settings video. So if you're not familiar with that, you can watch that video. But here I'm going to choose black mulch and I'm going to add it. And then again, if I need to change its billing settings, so let's say this one is billable by the yard. I'll click it. I'm going to say it's billable per unit. Track quantity is on. That's 55. The crews track the quantity. And I'm going to say we charge the customer $55 a yard installed. Default quantity is handy. If I think we should use 7 yards of mulch at that job, I'll put that in there. And that way it'll automatically show for the crew. And then they just have to override it. So if they used 8, they would put in 8. Service dates, I want to show the date. If there is a minimum quantity, so if that would kick in if we said we're going to bill per unit, and we have a minimum charge of say 1. So if the crew did half a yard of mulch, then I would put minimum quantity 1. So even if they put in half a yard of mulch, it would at least bill 1. Or in this case, we could have a minimum quantity of 7. So if we use more, we'll build them more, but we'll build them at least 7. You can do whatever you want with the minimum quantity. But in this case, I'll turn it off. I'll just say whatever the crew tracks, that's what we're going to bill for. And then I'll click OK. And don't forget that mulch has been linked to a specific service, spring cleanup. So now I have mulch. You won't see it here in the master list because we don't want it to show up all the time. You'll only see it here under services. I'm going to click spring cleanup, and then I see there under the linked activities mulch. So that's how to set that up. Now we've got a pretty robust billing system. We can track all these services when we're in and out of the job. We can track yard waste every time we leave the site. And we can also track mulch only when we perform the spring cleanup. That makes it easy again for the crews. We've got a whole lot of great tracking and invoicing information set up here. But we can make this faster. So the biggest factor will make it faster is importing estimates. So when you add a job, and we'll cover this in a different video, but rather than setting the job up from scratch and adding all that from scratch, we can just go down here and import estimates. Well, again, we'll show you that in a different video, but all that information will get set up for you, pricing, visits, all that stuff. So we don't have to spend all that time that we just did setting up all our billing. Now, sometimes though, you're going to set up a contract and you haven't had an estimate for it. And there's another way to make it faster. So we just set that stuff up. I'm going to go to a different job now. This job has some tasks already, maintenance again, but it doesn't have any services and it doesn't have any activities set up. It's just a job now. Instead of adding them all manually like I just did, if you've already set up a maintenance contract that's similar to this job, we can just import all that information from the other job. So it'll just copy it. We do that by going down here at the bottom. You can say import. Instead of hitting add services and adding them manually, just go import. Now we're going to select the job that we want to copy from. And I'll pick the job that we just set up a couple minutes ago. It's that one. Now it asks me what I want to copy, tasks, rates, or services. I'll say services, and yeah, I want to copy all the services, all the materials, and all the pricing from that other job. So we click OK. And now all those things we just set up on the other job just got copied into this job. Spring cleanup's there. If I look at the spring cleanup, the mulch that we linked to the job is there. The prices are all set up for us. So it all came from that other job. All I would need to do at this point is just tweak the prices. I would assume that maybe this customer has slightly different pricing. So we'll make our adjustments and that's it. We're all set. And that's a lot faster than setting up those services and materials one at a time. One of the latter things you'll need to know is invoicing. So the invoicing tab on the job is what's going to trigger this job for invoicing. So you can track services for information or for job costing, but if you want to bill for them, you have to set up the invoicing. Now, this is only available to users of LMN Pro. But what you can do now is set a contract start date and a contract end date, PO number if you need it, contract number if you need it, and then how you want extras billed, whether you want them attached to the monthly invoices or on separate invoices. You could have a default note. I'll show you these in a second, cost code and a tax. So we can create for this job the factors for invoicing. So if everything's billable on a per service basis, I've done all my work. In this case, though, if I go to services, some of the services are included in our monthly. So we have to set up, well, what's our monthly invoice for this? So I might say the total contract for this job is $4,900 a year divided up onto 8 invoices. So that'll create an average payment of $612. And we want to bill the client on the 7th day of the month. And so I'll just hit calculate. It'll create a payment for me and I'll hit OK. And what it's done now is build an invoice schedule from this month for 8 payments for this contracted total divided by 8 payments, and each day on the 7th day of the month it's billable. So that's going to charge for all my inclusive services. And again, if we import an estimate, all that's done for you. You don't need to do that manually, as long as you've set up your contract on the estimate. And for your extra work, you've already done all that. In here in your services, for the stuff that's billed per visit, when the crews tick off beds done on their timesheet, it'll automatically instantiate a $120 bill on that date, and it'll create an invoice for it if you're using LMN invoicing. And that's it for setting up invoicing. Once you've set up your services and materials, setting up invoicing is super easy. Set your dates, set your PO and contract number if you need it. If that job has monthly payments, you can set those up there, and then you're done. It'll invoice for it, and you can start to use invoicing. The last pieces of the advanced part of the job are the schedule. This is where I could add the job to a schedule. We'll cover that in the scheduling videos. But if you want to schedule work for this particular job, you can go here and you can go add the calendar. History is going to show me a breakdown of all the times I've already been at that job. So in order to show you something interesting, we've got to find a job that we've already been to. Now, if I go history, you can see that I've never done change orders or pressure treated fence, but these ones are lit up. So I know I've done some front hardscaping, and if I click that, I'll be able to look back at all the days and times we did front hardscaping. In this case, it's just one. Invoices will show me all the invoicing I've ever done for this job. I haven't done any here, but it would just list all the invoices. And timesheet photos will show me all the timesheet photos that crews have taken while they're working on that job. So while the crews are out in the field, if you're using LMN Pro, your crews can take photos of their work. And as they're taking photos, you'll see them here. Each month they'll be here in this little timeline, and you'll be able to review their notes, see who took it, download the pictures if you need to. And that's all we've got for advanced job setup in LMN. There's a lot of other things that we'll get a look at, tools and tricks that you'll find. You can open a job and copy it. That's another fast way to create jobs. So if you have a job and you want to copy everything about that job to a new job, use the copy button. Again, it's more faster than setting up a job by itself. Or if you have a whole bunch of jobs and you want to add services or tasks to all these jobs, you can select them here, then go down to the bottom and you can say things like add task. So I can add a task to all those selected jobs, or I could add billable rates to all those selected jobs. Or I could add services to all those selected jobs. So instead of doing them one at a time, we can do it all at once. More features like renew jobs and reassign jobs, we'll cover those in other videos. That's good for this one. Any questions on your job setup, please, especially on this one, reach out and ask us. We'd way rather handle your question now than have you set up 200 or 300 jobs and find out that you wished you set it up differently. So if you're on the fence about anything, please reach out to us. You got us in live chat. You got us at advice@golmn.com, or you can look it up for yourself on our help center at golmn.com/help.